Well, hey, welcome to the Consultant the Coach podcast. I have my buddy Josh here, and today we're talking life teams. And life teams, for crying out. Life teams are amazing. They will change your life if you don't have a bullpen of people that you can trust, depend, ask for things for, run items by, ideas by. It's all about life teams today. So, hey, what's the scripture for today, Josh?
So scripture for today, Proverbs 27:17. I think we've even used this one before, but iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another, and that's not to exclude women, but people can sharpen each other.
Absolutely, men and women.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing you're just throwing on there as we think about that scripture verse, and just recalling, those of you who've been listening for a while, we have talked about competency, we've talked about character, we've talked about community. A couple of weeks ago, during the holidays, you heard our podcast specifically on community. I think that came out between Christmas and New Year's. So Happy New Year's if we haven't wished you that already. And as a follow-on to that one from a couple of weeks ago, now that we're into 2022, we thought we'd talk about specifically an application of life teams, a place and a manifestation of this concept of sharpening, the sharp concept of accountability and support. That a lot in our community are desperately in need of. It's really this missing ingredient. Most of the people in our community, I think, have probably a high degree of competency, likely have a high degree of character, that probably varies some, but in community really for some people is just a huge gaping hole.
Absolutely, and it's a shame because I think no one ever says, I don't want community.
Right.
In true community, and it doesn't have to be, hey, we sit around a fire and sing Kumbaya. I'm talking real community. What do we need? And that looks different for different people.
So I think trying to talk about a little bit about what life teams and what's different about it than just general community. In my sense, and I know Eric, you have some thoughts on this too. Is this generally something that's a little bit more intense than maybe just having a friendship? You meet with someone regularly, maybe more specific, intentional, and accountable form of community.
Oh yeah.
You can have lots of community in your life, but maybe not a life team. So it's sort of like square's a rectangle, a rectangle's not a square. What else do you think of that's distinct about a life team?
And when I say life team, I'm not talking, even a small church group or, a book club. When I talk about a life team, I'm talking about being almost 100% transparent amongst a small group of people, whether it be comrades, friends, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who have been in the military, and it's really fascinating. Almost all people who have been in the military, and I would say those that have been in the military and gone to war and fought in war, it's fascinating. Their band of brothers and what they think of them is amazing. It's like they almost long for it, because when you go to war with someone, you have to completely depend on the group around you. Now, I've never been in the military. I know a lot of people who've been in the military, though. That's a good life team. It's who are you going to go to war with? What men, what women who have your back. I will defend you. I will help you. I will love you. I will confront you. I will, you name it. That is a good life team, and I think we all need it.
Yeah. Well, and I think for those maybe who follow in terms of faith perspective with us, there's a lot of churches who have small groups, and those are pretty transparent spiritually. What those tend to lack is the more comprehensive nature of surrounding yourself with people on a life team who have a depth of understanding of what you actually do, right, professionally. Right.
Well, I would go so far as to say most church small groups should function as a life team, and frankly, they're horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and I think part of that is you get a tapestry of diversity in the church of people from all different walks of life and background, which I don't think is a bad thing. But
diversity is good.
Yeah, it is. I think the trick is balancing diversity with intentionality in a life team in terms of people who have enough knowledge of what you do professionally and from a leadership perspective that I could maybe gain something spiritually from someone in a small group who's a great fit, but their life and their background is so different than mine in a life team. It just may not be terribly helpful to me or to them.
Yeah, and this is where even amongst our life team, we're in the same life team, but as I realized about 2 years ago, I needed a life team, and I started to build a life team. unlike the church where you'll jump into some small groups, you're going to have a great deal of diversity, which is a good thing. So you might have some really highly educated people, multiple degrees, as well as people who might be a single parent with no degree. And so you have this gaping hole of like, you're really almost talking to like an adult child sometimes. You're like, well, how is this person going to invest in me as a person? And so even in one of the recommendations, I would say, if someone is going to start a life team, be very, very selfish who you invite. Invite people who can complement you well, but are also along the same level. So with our life team, we have business owners. We have really great thinkers, because that's what I needed. I did, if I want to, I'm part of a small group at church as well too, but I don't grow as much as our life team, as an example. So how we, when I think of life teams, and I started our life team by literally writing down 30 to 40 names down and just literally going one by one. I wrote down men, I wrote down women, I wrote down Christians, I wrote non-Christians, I wrote, it's one of those things, and it really helped me realize what kind of team do I want to have in my life. And one of the things I did, I don't know, I even told you this, I told my wife, hey, I want to start this, and these are people I'm going to open my life to. Are you okay if I invite Josh into my life team? Are you okay if I, and I actually asked my wife, is it okay? Because it's one of those things I wanted her to approve. And there's something they're smiling. I want to invite so-and-so. She goes, I don't feel comfortable with that. Okay, I will respect that.
Yeah. Well, we're both fortunate to have wives who are very much more insightful than we are, so.
In some areas, yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more, let's talk a little bit about our life team. Tell me about just how it works, what's the pattern, what are some of the mechanics of...
Well, some of that, so when we started, or when I started our life team, I was very burnt out. And what I mean by that, I was burnt out being part of so many lousy groups and teams and mastermind groups and you name it. And I had to ask the question, if I was going to start a team, what would give me the most amount of energy? And what I needed was, I needed to be able to ask for what I needed in a transparent way and be honest. And so now I'm going to open myself up. This necessarily had to be a group that I trusted. If I said, hey Josh, here's a wart in my life, you're not going to take that, post it on Facebook, or berate me over it. And so when starting a life team, figure out what is it that you want. And so that's kind of how, and I let you know, hey Josh, I'm going to go into this. And for us, I think we spend 15 minutes. We get to decide what we need. So we go, we meet, greet, talk coffee and lunch. Hey, what happened with our kids? Yada, yada, yada. But then what we do is we say, hey, Josh, today I need containment. I'm going to share with you what went down at work or what went down with one of my kids. And I'm just going to share. I need nothing more than containment. So I'm telling you, hey, this is what I need. And your job's just to listen. I'm not asking for advice. I asked you for containment. Whereas other times I might say, hey Josh, I have this business decision. I don't know what to do. I need actually recommendation. From your point of view, what should I do? And I think that's a healthy life. How about you from your perspective?
Yeah, I like that, we have a pattern around how we're able to articulate, kind of using a number of different feelings or needs, different words we use that help to sort of convey to the group what we're needing, right? Because just talking about our weeks is one thing, but being able to describe what we need is in itself is an important exercise, right? Whether it's someone to get in or well, if we need encouragement, if we need celebration, if we need, the ability to have sort of a space for loss and mourning, or listening, or there's a number of, characteristics we tend to reference, which I appreciate. And these are so beneficial because it's not just what you get when you say that, but actually getting to the point where you can articulate what you need in a better way is improved. Not only just the way I get value out of the life team, but it's improved the way my marriage and my ability to articulate to my wife what I'm needing in any particular moment in a business setting, right? Saying, oh no, this is actually what I need, right? Like it's helping us articulate really what we're feeling inside in a more intelligent way.
the example that comes to my mind is, and I wish I had the scripture passage, but Jesus encountering the woman at the well.
Mm-hmm.
There was a encounter there, where Jesus is talking to the woman at the well, and what happens is, they're kind of going back and forth, and he's like, yeah, you have 5, and he tells her, yeah, you've had 5 husbands, and the man that you're with right now is not your husband. But he accepts her for who she is, and I think that's an idea of what true community is.
Mm-hmm.
And in a perfect life team, and there is no perfect life team, this side of heaven. However, what you see though is he accepted her for who she is, and I think that's what we desire as a community. We want to be accepted for wherever we're at in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I also love about that spiritual example is Jesus. This woman had flaws.
Mm-hmm.
He still accepted her. He actually told her, hey, go and sin no more, which is impossible, by the way.
Right.
But yet she was so encouraged
Mm-hmm.
by the encounter, she went and told everyone about it. I think that's what, in a perfect life team, hey, they know everything and this is awesome. And now that we'll get into, do we tell this to the person in the grocery store checkout line? I would say probably not.
Right.
Safe places, unsafe places. And
Sure.
whoever we invite to be part of our life team, that's kind of what we should have.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about at least is that radical balance of acceptance, but the ability to also tell us where we're wrong and tell us where we need to change and improve.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we're not accepting the person, but we're not necessarily accepting certain behaviors or
Mhm.
patterns or dysfunctions, or because the goal is you're opening yourself up to the reality that you don't have it all together. Therefore, that's
Mhm.
why you're joining the life team, right? I mean, that's part of the goal.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And and when we can be transparent, we can then the big 3 I use. I borrow this from Patrick Lencioni, is to be humble, hungry, and smart. We need to be humble. Hey, I blew it here. We're to be hungry. How can I need to be putting in the work myself. And we need to be smart. And I think as we come together, a really good life team, we can multiply our work. Whereas if you're just going to be a lone ranger, if I'm going to be a lone ranger, yeah, we'll still make money. We'll still do whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We could be so much better if we work together, though.
Yeah. What, before we talk a little bit more about some of the what and the whys behind these, I think you've been a part of other similar
Mhm.
life teams. What are other formats or forms or functions of life teams that you've experienced? I mean, we have one that gets together. It's every other week. It's
Yep.
in person. But
Other ones,
and others, right?
I've seen them in churches. I've seen them in business groups. I've seen them a number of ways. And they wouldn't be called a life team this way. I've also seen it called mastermind groups and amongst business communities where business leaders put their ideas together. Hey, what about this? And that is a version of a life team, more on a business level. I don't even know if mastermind is trademarked, but it probably is. So #mastermind. But we're like but you can do it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And our goal is to be, as you mentioned earlier, I love what you said. You said we want to grow in competency, character, and community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to make sure we're growing in all 3 of those ways. In a perfect life team, we do all of it in one place. You might need 3 separate life teams or a version of that. What does it look like?
Yeah, no, so I think, what I'm hearing is sort of zero in on in terms of life teams in particular is I think these are a set of individuals, I think recognizing that these folks know a lot about each other. This is pretty deep. So not for the faint of heart and willingness to really open up. But I think what's other particularly distinct, both having experience that we're talking about with you, is these are folks who are in it for each other's mutual benefit, and there's not a designated leader, coach, boss. Like those are other things. Those are other relationships.
Yeah, and there's a time to lead a group.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. Have you seen life teams with a life team leader? Does that exist, or is it mutual? Is it specifically a group of peers?
It does exist, and I have seen it.
Okay.
But the moment that there's a leader,
Right.
That leader has to coordinate instead of completely opening himself or herself up.
Right.
Now, I do want to go down a slight tangent because I've seen some people say, well, I don't need a life team. I have my wife and I have my dog. Yeah, if you think your wife is going to be everything, I'm sorry, she's not. Or if you think she is, I guarantee you she's going to blow up because she cannot handle, or at least my wife cannot handle all that I am. And my dog being all accepting is not very smart. I mean, she eats chicken poop, for crying out loud. Love my dog. So it's one of those things, I want my wife to be my friend and my lover. I don't want her to be this all-encompassing everything in my life. She's not, that's why I have brothers and sisters.
Right, yeah. Well, and this is part of, a life team plays a role. It's also not all-encompassing.
Oh,
You can't do
absolutely.
everything from a life team either. But I think you're right. I think for people to take this away, the life team, in terms of how this applies to the community aspect, is mutual investment, deeply sharing, building each other up, giving back, basically what each person asks for. I need this this week. Perfect. We're going to give that to you, whatever that is. Encouragement, celebration, grief, sadness, just coming alongside and sitting with someone through a period.
And
that it looks like.
I would say if you're part of a life team or a mastermind group or you name it, if it's not giving you what you originally signed up for, leave.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Cut it. And a good orchardist, we live in an ag area.
Yeah.
If you have a tree that's not producing fruit, don't cut it down first. Let's fertilize it first. Then let's trim it. But after all of that, if it's still not giving fruit, it's time to cut it down.
Well, and some of this would be, looking at what you have today and comparing it to some of the things we're talking about, whether or not it may, hopefully, we're giving you some food for thought on what you have in your community is giving you what you need or not.
Yeah.
And let's kind of quickly recap. Why is this important? Why do we need to have these life teams, this community? What is it about these life teams? Why is it important for us?
Well, I know the answer. Why do you think?
Well, I mean, briefly, it's a bit of a recap from a couple weeks ago, but for those of us who are, Christians and people of faith, it's how we're made, right?
Yeah.
God made us
We're made for community
with each other, with a Savior, and even if, there's plenty of people who, if even if they don't share faith with us, would understand there's a depth of need for relationship with others. It's part of the human condition. Even for those of us like myself who are introverted, I recognize there's a need for depth of relationship with others.
And along those lines, here's the cool thing. I mean, last week we talked about on-site. The fascinating thing is, like, even my small group at on-site, I'm a Christian. I would say most were not Christian. I had a great deal of connection with them.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was life-giving. And so what I would go on to say is, we shared all of this. We were thoroughly different people, but yet we connected and it was life-giving.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be someone who you share the same spiritual background. It can, but how much more if you also share the same spiritual background or the same employment background or something like that. So it's one of those things, there's a fine line. What does that look like? Yeah. We're made for community.
Yeah, you can't get people that look exactly like you. So
we don't want that. That's
exactly.
just redundant.
But I think there's certainly a fine line to think about how to shape your team, people around you with enough characteristics that are the same, but enough diversity that it's particularly enriching. Right? So let's talk about the last thing. So how does someone go about doing this? How are we giving them some guidance here on building out this life team?
Well, sometimes if you're so out of whack, it's helpful to have a coach walk you through it. Yeah. And one of my clients right now, this is what I'm doing with them, is I'm literally walking them through, this is how you start a life team. Because it is, if you're not apprehensive about this, I would actually go so far as you should be. Because if you open yourself up to the wrong person, you can get really, really hurt. Yeah. So there's that. But what I would say, and what I did, hey, create a list. Who do you think would be good on your life team? Figure out what are your needs. Yeah. And one of the things that I've done when I have figured someone that needs to be part, like I will sit down with people, I'll just invite them out to lunch and just have lunch with them. And I, in a sense, interview them. And then I share, this is what we do, this is what's kind of going on. I will then, with our life team, I gave them the book People Fuel by John Townsend and say, hey, this is kind of what we do. Read the last 15 pages. This is the group of comrades, and this is what I love to do. And hey, I'll touch base with you again in a month if this is something you're interested in. And I've had some of those conversations, and that's how we've started our life team. But then I give everyone multiple off ramps, because if someone's not bought in, I don't want them part of my life team. Because for me, it's not a ministry thing. It's like, dude, I need you to invest in me. I will invest in you, but it's got to reciprocate itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and a couple things I would just add on to that from another person's perspective. I think to build on what you're saying, it's probably landing, at least in the beginning, 1 to 3 other people.
Yeah.
We're not talking about 10, we're talking 1 to 3 others. Maybe it grows, but it's 1 to 3 others. Not necessarily looking for a leader, right? I think there's, to your point earlier, there's different roles a leader in our community might need. In the consultant coach, in the coach group, you may need a coach, right? We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're married, then your spouse is probably playing a particular role to fill certain sets of needs. But then this life team then is sort of filling a different niche of needs, right? So there's differences there.
And I would also go that once you start, this can't just be meet once a month. I mean, there's
twice a month.
It's got to be, I'd say, twice a month, and even then, check-ins in addition to that. And I'm not saying, hey, we have new best friend all the time. Check-ins via text message, via phone, via whatever. Because what happens is if you only see each other once a month, yeah, you can kind of connect, but there's not the everyday life. Sometimes things blow up, or sometimes, hey, this is what happened, or just the everyday mundane.
Yeah, well, I mean, as an example of that too, that hopefully encourages folks, I think with our life team, which I appreciate, is it's not like life doesn't happen for the 2 weeks between we meet. So when I have a significant need or just need to vent, I can text you guys, or I can give somebody a call and just scream, or I can ask for prayer, or I can, whatever those things are, because there's, again, once you get in the pattern of articulating what you need, you realize that there's something you need most days. And so when there is that piece of like acute need that you feel between the group, you can just say, hey guys, I need this, or hey, I want to celebrate this.
Can you do a life team remote? Can you do a life team via Zoom?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've talked about that. I think there's certainly some interest among the consultant coach community for this. So it's something we're looking at, for folks in our group, or folks know people, like for example, they've gone to school with, maybe they can reconnect with them for this purpose, right, over Zoom. So it's certainly possible. And I think for the consultant coach group, reach out again if there's a need there, either for a coach, right? Eric can do that. Others, or if you're looking to join a group and you don't have an immediate circle, we can try to pair you with some other folks who are similar to you, and get you set up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what else? What's next?
What's next? What's next week, or what else is with Life Team?
Sure, both.
No. Life Team, keep moving forward. I would say Life Team, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And that's what life teams are all about, right? Is getting with other people to keep things in life and business, focused on your values, expressing yourself to others in a safe place, right? So if you haven't found that life team, dig into it, and if we can be of any help to you in that process, let us know.
Can I choose our next podcast episode? Are you gonna get mad?
Oh, fine.
Yeah, this was a funny conversation. Our next podcast episode is gonna be on calendars.
I think you're gonna talk more than me.
I will. Calendars are amazing. They're the most amazing thing in the world.
Okay, good. I look forward to hearing this.
Yeah.
I look forward to listening to
You
this
should have said, as we come up with podcast ideas, like, how about I do this? And Josh just looking at me like, you're on crack. This is going to be so dumb. No, calendars are amazing.
Okay. Are we lumping in task management? Or
no, that's next. I could literally
do both
hours on calendars.
I don't believe it.
I love calendars.
I don't believe it. You've got 20-ish minutes.
I could give you 3 days.
No way.
How about, so can
Challenge
we settle?
accepted.
Can we settle for 20 to 30 minutes on calendars next week?
But are we doing task management too, or is
that's the next week.
We're doing separate?
This is separate.
You're gonna give me 20 plus minutes just on.
I could give you 3 days.
All right.
I could do a retreat on calendars.
Don't believe that.
It would be amazing. It would be life changing.
I look forward to you opening my mind to something I've
I
never
will
considered.
blow you away. So next week on the
Excellent.
consultant and the coach. Hey, by the way, thank you for listening.
I hope they come back to
Teams.
download this one.
Good news for you. I will even write the blog post on
It'll
calendars.
probably be our most downloaded podcast.
If it is, you have to buy me Starbucks.
I will.
Yeah, so
Deal.
how about if it gets more than 50% of our typical other ones, you still buy me Starbucks because that shows if
No,
it's
no,
if
no,
it's
no,
the
it's
worst.
gotta set a record.
What?
It's got to set a record.
Okay, it will set a record
Okay.
on calendars.
Half. We gotta like break the record. I'm not gonna buy any Starbucks for only half.
Exactly. Next week on calendars. If you don't have a great calendar system, how you're running your life and what that looks like, frankly, you're going to blow up. You will absolutely blow up if you don't have a great calendar system. So you don't have to listen to next week's podcast, but if you don't, your life will blow up. So next week on the Consultant
There you
Coach,
go. Come back and see us. You don't want that to happen.
it will be our most downloaded podcast. So Josh will buy me Starbucks.
All right.
Hey, until then,
Take care,
go on to theconsultantcoach.com, read Josh's latest blog post, and until then, hey, have a great week.